Imagine a private company, not a government, not a king, not an empire, but a company with shareholders and a board of directors that conquered one of the richest civilizations in human history. It had its own army of 200,000 soldiers, its own navy, its own prisons, its own currency. At its peak, it controlled half the world's trade and generated more revenue than most nations on Earth. This is not a story about a country. This is the story of a corporation. The East India Company. It began with a problem: spices. In the year 1600, Europe was obsessed with pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves. Not just for flavor, but for survival. Before refrigeration, spices were the only way to preserve meat through long winters. The problem? All the spices came from Asia, and the only trade route was controlled by the Ottoman Empire, which charged enormous taxes on every shipment passing through. European merchants were desperate. On the last day of the year 1600, December 31st, Queen Elizabeth I of England signed a royal charter. She granted a group of London merchants the exclusive right to trade with Asia. They called themselves the Governor and Company of Merchants of London, trading into the East Indies. History would know them simply as the East India Company. The original investors, just 218 merchants. Total capital raised, £68,000. A modest beginning for what would become the most powerful commercial enterprise in history. Their first voyage set sail in 1601. 5 ships, James Lancaster in command. Destination: the Spice Islands of Southeast Asia. They returned 2 years later with a cargo hold full of pepper. The profit: 300% return on investment. The investors were stunned and hungry for more. To the first century, the company was exactly that, a company. It traded, it negotiated, it paid taxes to local rulers. But everything changed in 1707. The Mughal Empire, the Islamic dynasty that had ruled India for 2 centuries, began to collapse. Its last great emperor, Aurangzeb, died that year. What followed was chaos, succession wars, regional rebellions. The empire fragmented into dozens of competing kingdoms. The company saw opportunity. In 1757, Robert Clive, a young clerk who had joined the company at age 18, led a force of just 3,000 soldiers against the Nawab of Bengal's army of 50,000. The Battle of Plassey lasted just a few hours. The Nawab had been betrayed by his own generals, bribed by the company beforehand. His army collapsed. Bengal fell. It was the most consequential corporate decision in history. The East India Company now controlled Bengal, one of the richest regions on Earth. With a population of 40 million people, the most productive agricultural land in Asia, the center of the global textile trade. From that moment, the company stopped being a trading firm. It became a government. What followed is almost impossible to comprehend. The company built an army, not just a small private security force, a professional military force that eventually numbered 200,000 soldiers, twice the size of the British Army itself. It collected taxes from entire provinces. It ran courts, issued passports. It made foreign policy. It declared war. In London, the company's headquarters on Leadenhall Street was essentially a second government. When Parliament wanted to know what was happening in India, they asked the company's directors, not their own officials. The money that flowed back to Britain was extraordinary. Historians estimate that between 1757 and 1947, the company and the British Crown extracted approximately $45 trillion from India, accounting for inflation. That number represents one of the largest transfers of wealth in human history. To put it simply, India was one of the wealthiest civilizations on Earth in 1700. By 1947, when Britain finally left, India's share of global GDP had fallen from 25% to just 4%. The company did not develop India. It drained it. And for the shareholders in London, the returns were spectacular. In 1769, the monsoon failed in Bengal. Crops withered, rivers ran low, grain stores emptied. A famine was coming. Everyone in Bengal knew it. What did the East India Company do? It raised taxes. Company officials, under orders to maximize revenue for shareholders, continued to demand full tax payments from farmers who had nothing to harvest. Traders who tried to stockpile grain for relief efforts were arrested. The company monopolized the grain trade and drove up prices. Between 1769 and 1773, approximately 10 million people died. 1/3 of Bengal's population. Gone in 4 years. In the same period, the company declared a dividend payment to shareholders. The Bengal famine is one of the darkest chapters in corporate history. A moment when the logic of shareholder profit collided directly with the survival of millions of human beings. And profit won. Back in London, there was outrage, but not at the deaths. The outrage was that the company's stock price was falling and threatening to bring down British banks. In 1773, Parliament passed the Regulating Act, not to punish the company for the famine, but to stabilize it financially. The company was too big to fail, and everyone knew it. By the 1800s, the company had a problem in China. The Chinese wanted silver in exchange for tea, silk, and porcelain, but the company was running low on silver. Trade was imbalanced. The solution they found was deeply sinister. The company began growing opium in India on an industrial scale. Then it smuggled the opium into China, bypassing the Chinese government's ban on the drug. Within decades, the company had created an addiction epidemic across China. An estimated 10 million Chinese citizens were addicted to opium by 1838. When China's emperor tried to stop the trade, confiscating and destroying 1,000 tons of opium, Britain went to war. The First Opium War, 1839 to 1842. Britain won. China was forced to open 5 ports to British trade, pay a massive indemnity, and hand over Hong Kong. The company had started a war and won a territorial prize to protect its drug trade. It was perhaps the most brazen act of corporate imperialism ever committed. The end came suddenly. In 1857, Indian soldiers called sepoys, who served in the company's army, revolted. The trigger was small, a rumor that new rifle cartridges were greased with beef and pork fat, offensive to both Hindu and Muslim soldiers. But the anger ran deep. Decades of taxation, cultural humiliation, land seizures, a growing feeling that the company wanted to destroy Indian society and replace it with something unrecognizable. The uprising spread across northern India. The company's forces struggled to contain it. Britain was shocked, and Parliament finally asked the question it had avoided for 2 centuries. Why are we letting a private company govern 200 million people? In 1858, the East India Company was dissolved. The British Crown took direct control of India. The company's army, courts, territories, all transferred to Her Majesty's government. The most powerful corporation in history was liquidated by an act of parliament. Its final shareholders received compensation. Its officers received pensions. The 10 million who died in Bengal received nothing. The East India Company lasted 258 years. At its peak, it was more powerful than most nations. It pioneered techniques of monopoly, lobbying, and regulatory capture the corporations still use today. It showed the world that private profit and public governance are fundamentally incompatible, and that when you mix them, the people always pay the price. The next time you hear that corporations should have more power, or that markets regulate themselves, remember the East India Company, the world's first too-big-to-fail corporation. If this documentary changed the way you see history, subscribe. We upload new stories every week, the ones that didn't make it into your textbook. What corporation do you think has too much power today? Tell me in the comments. Take